The elevator doors opened on the 47th floor with a soft ding, and Marcus Johnson stepped out carrying 3 pizza boxes in a grocery bag. The 24-year-old black delivery driver checked his phone again. Apartment 4712, Mr. Anderson. But as he walked down the marble hallway lined with priceless artwork, he had no idea he'd gotten off on the wrong floor. Marcus wore his usual delivery uniform, a red polo shirt with Tony's Pizza embroidered on the chest, worn jeans and sneakers that had seen better days. His backpack contained textbooks from Columbia Law School, where he was finishing his final semester while working 3 jobs to pay tuition. The hallway was unlike anything he'd seen during his 2 years of delivery work. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings, and original paintings that looked like museum pieces adorned the walls. The carpet beneath his feet was so thick it muffled his footsteps completely. He paused at apartment 4712, double-checking the address on his delivery app. Everything matched. Mr. Anderson had ordered 2 large pizzas and groceries, paid online, and left a note. "Just knock. Door will be open." Marcus knocked 3 times and waited. When no one answered, he tried the handle. The door opened easily, revealing a breathtaking penthouse that stretched for what seemed like forever. "Mr. Anderson?" he called out, stepping inside cautiously. "Pizza delivery." The apartment was a monument to wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Manhattan, while marble floors reflected the light from multiple crystal chandeliers. Modern art covered the walls, and furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine filled the space. Marcus set the delivery bags on a granite counter in the kitchen area, which was larger than his entire studio apartment in Queens. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. "Hello, Mr. Anderson? Your food is here." That's when he heard footsteps behind him. "What the hell are you doing in my home?" Marcus spun around to find a tall, imposing man in his 50s standing in the doorway. The man wore an expensive suit even though it was Saturday afternoon, and his eyes blazed with a fury that made Marcus's blood run cold. I'm sorry, sir. I'm delivering food to Mr. Anderson. Apartment 4712?" "This is apartment 4712, the man said, his voice dangerously low. "And I'm definitely not Mr. Anderson." Marcus felt his stomach drop as he realized his mistake. Wrong floor. He'd gotten off on 47 instead of 37. "I'm so sorry, sir. I must have gotten off on the wrong floor. I'll just take the food and—" "You'll do no such thing," the man interrupted, pulling out his phone. "Breaking and entering is a serious crime." "Breaking and entering? Sir, the door was unlocked, and I thought—" "I don't care what you thought. You're in my home without permission, and that's all that matters." What Marcus didn't know was that he had just walked into the penthouse of Richard Whitmore, billionaire CEO of Whitmore Industries and one of the most ruthless businessmen in New York. And what Richard didn't know was that the young man he was about to have arrested would soon hold the power to destroy everything he'd built. Richard Whitmore circled Marcus like a predator sizing up its prey. The billionaire's penthouse suddenly felt like a cage, and Marcus was trapped inside with a man who clearly saw him as a threat. "Let me guess," Richard said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You accidentally got off on the wrong floor, just happened to try the door, and coincidentally discovered it was unlocked. What a remarkable series of coincidences." "Sir, I can show you the delivery order on my phone. Mr. Anderson, apartment 3712. I just got confused with the floors." "Of course you have a fake order ready. You people always have your stories prepared." The phrase, "you people," hit Marcus like a slap. He'd heard it countless times growing up in East New York, but it never got easier to swallow. "Sir, I'm just trying to deliver food. If you'll let me show you my phone—" "Don't move," Richard commanded, dialing 911. "Yes, I need police immediately. I have an intruder in my penthouse, African-American male, about 6 feet tall, wearing a delivery uniform. He's claiming to be here for a delivery, but he's clearly casing the place." Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. A criminal record would end his law school career, destroy his chances of passing the bar exam, and waste 3 years of sacrifice and struggle. "Please, sir, you don't understand. I'm a law student at Columbia. I work for Tony's Pizza to pay my tuition. This is just a mistake." Richard laughed coldly. "A law student? That's rich. Next you'll tell me you're here to help with my legal work." Actually, Marcus said quietly, I was just accepted to the prosecutor's office internship program. I start Monday. Something flickered across Richard's face, but it was gone so quickly, Marcus almost missed it. Even more reason to have you arrested, Richard said. Can't have criminals in the prosecutor's office, can we? Within minutes, Marcus could hear sirens in the distance. His life was about to be destroyed by a simple case of mistaken floor numbers. Sir, please, just call Tony's Pizza. They can verify that I work there. Or call the delivery customer, Mr. Anderson in 3712. He's probably wondering where his food is. I'm not calling anyone, Richard replied. You broke into my home and you're going to face the consequences. The elevator dinged in the hallway, and Marcus could hear heavy footsteps approaching, multiple officers from the sound of it. There's something else you should know, Marcus said desperately as the footsteps grew closer. Before this gets out of hand. What's that? Richard asked with amusement. The internship I mentioned? It's in the white-collar crime division. They specifically recruited me because of my background investigating corporate fraud. Richard's smug expression faltered slightly. And the reason I was so interested in corporate law, Marcus continued, his voice steady despite his racing heart, is because I've been following a case for 3 years, a case involving systematic tax evasion, worker exploitation, and bribery, a case involving Whitmore Industries. The color drained from Richard's face. You see, Mr. Whitmore, Marcus said, I know exactly who you are. The question is, do you really want to have the person investigating your company arrested for delivering pizza to the wrong floor? The police officers knocked on the door just as Richard processed what Marcus had said. For a moment, the billionaire stood frozen, his hand on the door handle, calculating the implications. Mr. Whitmore, came a voice from the hallway, NYPD, responding to a break-in call. Richard looked at Marcus, seeing him for the first time not as a random intruder, but as a potential threat to his empire. What kind of case? Richard asked quietly. The kind that could send you to federal prison for 20 years, Marcus replied. The kind that the Southern District of New York has been building for 18 months. Richard's hand dropped from the door handle. Sir, are you all right in there? The officer's voice was more insistent now. I'm going to open that door, Richard said slowly, and you're going to explain to these officers that this was all a misunderstanding, that you're here on legitimate business. What kind of legitimate business? Marcus asked. Richard's mind raced. You're my new legal consultant. I called you here to discuss some compliance issues. Marcus almost smiled. 3 minutes ago, Richard had been ready to have him arrested. Now he was inventing cover stories. And in exchange, Marcus asked, we'll discuss that after the police leave. Richard opened the door to find 3 NYPD officers standing in the hallway, hands resting on their weapons. Officers, thank you for responding so quickly, Richard said with a forced smile. But I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. This young man is here on business. The lead officer, Sergeant Martinez, looked skeptical. Sir, you reported a break-in, said you had an intruder. Yes, well, I wasn't expecting him to arrive early, and when I found him in my kitchen, I assumed, well, you know how it is these days. Can't be too careful. Martinez looked past Richard at Marcus, who was still standing near the kitchen counter with the pizza boxes. And you are? Martinez asked Marcus. Marcus Johnson, he replied calmly. I'm a legal consultant. Mr. Whitmore asked me to come by to discuss some compliance matters. With pizza? Martinez asked, noting the delivery bags. I was making a delivery in the building when Mr. Whitmore called, Marcus said smoothly. When I mentioned I was already here, he asked me to come up. It was a lie, but it was the kind of believable lie that would keep him out of jail and give him leverage over one of New York's most powerful men. Martinez studied both men for a moment. Mr. Whitmore, are you sure you want to cancel this call? Once we leave, if you have any more problems. No problems, officer. Just a misunderstanding between business associates. After the police left, Richard closed the door and turned to face Marcus. The power dynamic had shifted completely. What do you want? Richard asked bluntly. Justice, Marcus replied. Richard poured himself a scotch with trembling hands, while Marcus remained standing near the kitchen counter. The pizza boxes sat between them like evidence of how quickly life could change. "You said you've been investigating my company for 3 years," Richard said. "That's impossible. You're just a pizza delivery driver." "I'm also a law student who chose corporate crime as my specialty specifically because of Whitmore Industries," Marcus replied. "My thesis was on systematic labor violations in major corporations. Your company was my primary case study." Richard's face paled. That's privileged academic work. No one can access that." "Actually, anyone can access public records. OSHA violations, worker compensation claims, tax filings, federal contracts. It's all public information if you know where to look." Marcus walked to the windows overlooking the city. "Did you know that your construction division has the highest injury rate of any major contractor in New York? 3 times the industry average. Workers get hurt. It's a dangerous job." "Workers get hurt when safety protocols are ignored to save money," Marcus corrected, "like when you eliminated the safety inspector positions in 2019 to boost quarterly profits." Richard set down his glass hard enough to make it ring against the marble counter. "And then there's the tax situation," Marcus continued. 17 shell companies in Delaware, routing profits through Ireland to avoid corporate taxes. The Pandora Papers didn't expose you, but your own SEC filings did. That's legal tax planning. It's legal until you fail to report foreign income, which you did in 2020 and 2021. That's federal tax evasion." Richard slumped into a chair. "What do you want? Money? A job? Name your price." Marcus turned from the window. "I told you. Justice. That's not an answer. Everyone has a price." "Do they?" Marcus asked. "Let me tell you why I really became interested in your company, Mr. Whitmore. 3 years ago, my Uncle James was working construction on your Midtown project. He fell from scaffolding that hadn't been properly secured, crushed his spine. He's paralyzed from the waist down." Richard said nothing. "Your insurance company fought his workers' compensation claim for 2 years. Said he was drunk on the job, even though the blood test was negative. They hired investigators to follow him, trying to catch him walking so they could deny his claim." Marcus's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath. "My uncle lost his house, his savings, his dignity. He's living in a 1-bedroom apartment now, getting by on disability payments that don't cover his medical bills. I'm sorry about your uncle, but I can't be responsible for every workplace accident. You can be responsible for deliberately ignoring safety violations to save money," Marcus interrupted. "You can be responsible for instructing your insurance company to deny legitimate claims. And you can be responsible for lying to federal investigators about your company's safety record." Richard stood up abruptly. "You can't prove any of that." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Richard a folder labeled Whitmore Industries, Evidence. "Actually, I can. Emails between your executives discussing safety cost-cutting measures, records showing you knew about equipment failures and chose not to fix them. Audio recordings of insurance meetings where your representatives were instructed to deny claims regardless of merit." "How did you get—" Richard began, then stopped. "I told you, I've been investigating you for 3 years. I've been very thorough." Richard stared at Marcus's phone screen, watching his empire crumble with each piece of evidence scrolled past. Internal emails, financial records, recorded conversations. It was a prosecutor's dream case. "This is illegal," Richard said weakly. "You can't use stolen information." "I didn't steal anything," Marcus replied. "Everything here was provided voluntarily by current and former employees who were tired of being part of a criminal enterprise. Former employees are disgruntled. Their testimony won't hold up in court. Maybe not individually, but when 57 different people tell the same story with documentation to back it up, it becomes compelling." Marcus swiped to another folder. "Like these safety reports that your managers were ordered to falsify, or these emails instructing supervisors to ignore OSHA violations, or these recorded meetings where you personally approved policies that you knew would endanger workers." Richard collapsed back into his chair. "What do you want me to do? I can't change the past." "No, but you can change the future." Marcus sat down across from Richard, no longer the nervous delivery driver, but a confident legal professional. Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Whitmore. You're going to implement a comprehensive safety program across all your construction sites. You're going to hire independent safety inspectors, not company employees. And you're going to establish a $50 million fund to compensate workers who were injured due to safety violations. $50 million? That's impossible. It would bankrupt the construction division. No, it would reduce your profit margin from 47% to 32%, still well above industry average. Richard looked stunned. How do you know our profit margins? Because I've analyzed every aspect of your business. I know you can afford this, Mr. Whitmore. The question is whether you'll do it voluntarily or wait for the federal government to force you. And if I agree to this? Then maybe the prosecutor's office receives an anonymous tip about other companies instead of yours. Maybe my thesis focuses on someone else's corporate crimes. Richard understood. It wasn't exactly blackmail. It was more like a choice between voluntary reform and criminal prosecution. There's something else, Marcus continued. My Uncle James. You're going to personally ensure that his workers' compensation claim is approved, with full back pay and medical coverage. Done, Richard said immediately. And you're going to hire a new director of worker safety, someone with an impeccable record and complete authority to shut down any unsafe work sites. Fine. Anyone in particular you'd recommend? Marcus smiled for the first time since entering the Penthouse. Actually, yes. James Johnson, my uncle. 30 years of construction experience, and now he has the motivation to make sure no other worker gets hurt the way he did. Richard stared at Marcus with newfound respect. You've been planning this for 3 years. Justice takes time, Mr. Whitmore, but it's worth the wait. As the reality of his situation sank in, Richard studied Marcus with different eyes. The young man sitting across from him wasn't just a delivery driver who'd gotten off on the wrong floor. He was a strategist who had methodically built a case that could destroy a billion-dollar company. How? Richard asked finally. How does a pizza delivery driver get access to corporate executives willing to turn over evidence? Because a pizza delivery driver is invisible, Marcus replied. I delivered food to your corporate headquarters dozens of times, to your executives' homes, to their private clubs and restaurants. People talk freely around service workers because they don't see us as real people. Richard winced at the accuracy of the observation. Your director of operations, Michael Chen, orders Chinese food every Tuesday night while working late. He talks to his wife on speakerphone about how the safety budget cuts are unconscionable but necessary for profitability. That conversation happened 3 feet from me while I waited for his credit card to process. And your head of insurance, Jennifer Walsh, has a standing order every Friday at Romano's restaurant. She sits in the same booth and calls her boss to report on claim denials. I heard her bragging about denying a claim for a worker who lost 2 fingers, even though she knew the safety equipment had failed. Each revelation hit Richard like a physical blow. His own executives had unknowingly confessed their crimes to a pizza delivery driver. But the recordings, Richard said, how did you get audio of internal meetings? Marcus pulled out what looked like a standard delivery receipt holder. Turns out you can buy surveillance equipment that looks like everyday objects. Funny how no one searches a pizza delivery guy. Jesus Christ, Richard muttered. You've been recording us for 3 years. Only when crimes were being discussed. I'm not interested in your personal lives or legitimate business conversations. Just the illegal activities that hurt innocent workers. Richard stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the city where his empire was slowly being exposed. You could have gone straight to the prosecutor, he said. Why give me a chance to fix things? Because destroying you doesn't help the workers who are still being endangered by your policies. Criminal prosecution takes years, and in the meantime, people keep getting hurt. Marcus joined him at the window. This way, the dangerous practices stop immediately. Workers get the protection they deserve. And justice happens for everyone, not just the lawyers and judges. And my uncle gets his life back, Marcus added quietly. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Your uncle, James. What's he like? Strongest man I know. Worked construction for 30 years, never missed a day. Taught me that honest work has dignity no matter what anyone else thinks. Even when that work is delivering pizza while investigating the customers? Marcus smiled. Especially then. It takes strength to smile and say, "Thank you, sir," when someone treats you like you're invisible, all while gathering evidence that could send them to prison. And now James will make sure other families don't go through what we did. And you'll learn that the best security for your business isn't silencing whistleblowers. It's not giving them anything to whistle about. Over the next hour, Richard and Marcus worked out the details of what would become the most comprehensive corporate reform program in construction industry history. Richard made phone calls while Marcus verified each commitment with specific timelines and accountability measures. "Chen, it's Richard," Whitmore said into his phone. "I need you to halt all construction activities immediately until we complete a safety audit." "Yes," I said, "all activities, because we're implementing new protocols. No, this is not optional." Between calls, Richard looked at Marcus with something approaching admiration. "You know, if you weren't busy destroying my company, I'd offer you a job." "I already have a job," Marcus replied, "starting Monday at the prosecutor's office." "Right, the white-collar crime division." Richard paused. "Will you be working on our case?" "That depends on whether there's still a case to work on." Richard made another call. "Walsh, it's Richard. I need you to review every worker compensation claim denial from the past 5 years, every single one, because we're implementing a new policy of fair and immediate settlements for legitimate claims." When he hung up, Marcus nodded approvingly. "Good start, but I want to see the actual policy changes in writing." "You don't trust me?" "Mr. Whitmore, 30 minutes ago you were trying to have me arrested for delivering pizza. Trust will take time." Richard laughed despite himself. "Fair enough." By evening, they had established a timeline for comprehensive reforms. Marcus would monitor progress through his new position at the prosecutor's office, while Richard would personally oversee the implementation of safety protocols that would serve as a model for the entire industry. "There's one more thing," Marcus said as they finished reviewing the documents. "What's that?" "The pizza I was delivering. It's probably cold by now, but Mr. Anderson in 3712 is still waiting for his food." Richard looked at the forgotten delivery bags. "You're still going to complete the delivery?" "I always finish what I start," Marcus said. "That's how I was able to investigate your company for 3 years without anyone noticing." "Keep the pizza," Richard said. "I'll pay for Mr. Anderson's order and have fresh food sent up to him." "That's not how it works. I take responsibility for my mistakes." Marcus gathered the delivery bags and headed for the door, then paused. "Mr. Whitmore, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "When you saw me in your kitchen, what did you assume?" Richard was quiet for a moment. "I assumed you were stealing from me. Because you were black and you didn't belong in my space." It was the first completely honest thing Richard had said all day. "And now?" Marcus asked. "Now I think I've learned more about justice in one afternoon than I did in 20 years of business." Marcus nodded. "That's a good start." Marcus knocked on the door of apartment 3712, and this time he was on the right floor. An elderly man named Mr. Anderson answered, confused about why his pizza was so late, but grateful when Marcus explained about the mix-up. "Son, you went through all that trouble just to bring me cold pizza?" Mr. Anderson asked. "A job is a job, sir. I said I'd deliver your food, so here it is." Mr. Anderson tipped him $20 and asked if he wanted to come in for coffee, but Marcus politely declined. He had studying to do for his final exams, and tomorrow he would start preparing for a career that would take him far from pizza delivery. As he rode the elevator down to the lobby, Marcus reflected on the day's events. He'd started the morning as a law student working a part-time job to pay tuition. He'd ended as someone who had fundamentally changed one of New York's largest corporations. His phone buzzed with a text from his Uncle James. "How did the prosecutor interview go last week?" "Still haven't heard back about the workers' comp appeal." Marcus smiled as he typed back, "Interview went great. Start Monday." And Uncle James, I think your appeal is about to be approved. Also, you might be getting a job offer soon." "A job offer? Doing what?" "Making sure other workers don't get hurt the way you did." Back in the penthouse, Richard stood at his window, looking out at a city that suddenly seemed different. His phone rang with calls from executives who had received unexpected orders to implement immediate safety changes, but he ignored them all. Instead, he called his personal attorney. "David, it's Richard. I need you to draft a comprehensive corporate reform plan." "Yes, immediately, because tomorrow morning, Whitmore Industries is going to become the safest construction company in America." "Richard, what brought this on?" "Let's just say I was reminded that justice has a way of finding you, even when you think you're powerful enough to avoid it." The U.S. Attorney's Office was buzzing with activity when Marcus walked into his new corner office. 6 months as a prosecutor had taught him that real justice happened not just in courtrooms, but in boardrooms where policies were made that affected thousands of workers. His phone rang. It was James. "Marcus, you need to see the news," his uncle said excitedly. Marcus turned on the TV to find a breaking news report. "Whitmore Industries wins National Safety Award. Company credited with industry-leading worker protection policies." The reporter continued. "CEO Richard Whitmore credits the transformation to hiring James Johnson, a former construction worker, as Director of Worker Safety. Johnson, who was paralyzed in a workplace accident 3 years ago, has implemented protocols that have eliminated safety violations across all Whitmore construction sites." Marcus smiled as the camera showed his uncle in a wheelchair, inspecting a construction site with authority and respect from every worker present. His phone buzzed with a text from Richard Whitmore. "Thought you'd want to know? We just won the largest federal construction contract in company history. Turns out the government prefers contractors with perfect safety records. Who knew?" Another text followed. "Also, James is remarkable. Best hire I ever made. Thank you for teaching me that business success and worker safety aren't mutually exclusive." Marcus set down his phone and returned to reviewing case files. His next investigation involved a pharmaceutical company that was overcharging for life-saving medications, but that was a story for another day. Sometimes justice came through courtrooms and prison sentences, but sometimes it came through the simple act of giving someone the chance to do the right thing. Either way, Marcus had learned that the most powerful weapon against injustice wasn't wealth or status. It was patience, preparation, and the absolute refusal to accept that things couldn't change. The pizza delivery driver who had accidentally entered the wrong penthouse had delivered something far more valuable than food. He had delivered accountability to a man who thought he was above the law. And in the process, he had proven that sometimes the person you underestimate the most is exactly the person who holds your future in their hands. A year later, Marcus stood before a federal judge in the Southern District of New York, but this time as a prosecutor, not a defendant. He was presenting evidence in a case against a different corporation, one that had ignored worker safety while its executives enriched themselves. In the gallery, he spotted Richard Whitmore, who had come to observe the proceedings. After court, Richard approached him. "Learning anything useful?" Marcus asked. "Learning that I was lucky," Richard replied. "That prosecutor up there, that could have been me. It still could be if you backslide on the reforms." "Not going to happen. James won't let me even if I wanted to." They walked out of the courthouse together, an unlikely pair. The former pizza delivery driver turned prosecutor, and the billionaire turned reformer. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" Richard said as they reached the street. "Sure." "That day when you knocked on my door, was it really an accident?" Marcus smiled. "Mr. Whitmore, do you really think a law student who spent 3 years investigating your company would accidentally get off on the wrong floor?" Richard stared at him. "You planned the whole thing." "I planned to deliver the evidence to the prosecutor's office on Monday morning. The elevator mix-up was just divine intervention giving you a chance to reform before facing criminal charges." "So it was an accident?" "The elevator was an accident. Being prepared for the opportunity was not." Richard laughed. "You know, in another life, you would have made a terrifying CEO. In this life, I'm making sure CEOs don't have anything to be afraid of, as long as they follow the law." As they parted ways, Marcus's phone buzzed with a delivery notification. Tony's Pizza was running a special promotion, and they needed extra drivers for the evening rush. Marcus looked at the notification and smiled. He still picked up occasional delivery shifts, not because he needed the money anymore, but because it reminded him that every job has dignity, every person has worth. And you never know who might be listening when you think no one important is around. After all, the next pizza delivery driver you dismiss might just be gathering evidence for your next federal investigation. Justice, Marcus had learned, often comes through the front door wearing a delivery uniform and carrying more than just food. If this story of determination, justice, and unexpected opportunities touched your heart, remember that everyone deserves respect regardless of their job or circumstances. Sometimes the person you underestimate the most is exactly the person who can change your life forever. Subscribe for more stories that remind us that justice has a way of finding those who think they're above the law.